the pages of the World Wrestling Federation magazine, here's updates.
Party people in the place to be. What's going on? It's me. This time the cowboy really rides off into the sunset. That's the big takeaway. That's the big line. That's the tag. That is the period on the sentence, in the paragraph, on the page, in the chapter, in the volume. That, let's be real here, could signify the end of The Undertaker's career. And the only way to really signify that is by cracking open a little jack for Big Mark and his career. So, we finally end the Undertaker Last Ride documentary series with the last chapter revelation. And the very real possibility that we have seen the last of The Undertaker. As far as professional wrestling, as far as a wrestler on a regular basis is, or not even on a regular basis because he hasn't been, as a wrestler is concerned. Possibly, because this is pro wrestling. All right, so let's start at the start and take it away. We start with the Extreme Rules clips of that match, which we ended the last chapter with, and Taker saying that he felt good. Felt like he could do a couple more. There it is. Felt like he could do a couple more, etc., etc., etc. Triple H says a very poignant quote early on. And again, they did that thing with the Extreme Rules clip where they highlighted all the highlights and got rid of all the lowlights. Now, admittedly, that match was a significant improvement on Undertaker's previous offerings before then. But still, the documentary did the documentary thing. Triple H says what he deserves is not the moment. Actually, let me do this one. Triple H says what he deserves is not the moment. He deserves to be satisfied. What does that mean? He doesn't deserve the moment. He deserves to be satisfied. Here's the thing. What that means is we've had these moments in Taker's career. We've had these moments where it appears beyond any shadow of doubt or reason that the Undertaker's career is officially over. There is no more Mark Calloway as the Undertaker as we know it. It's done. It's the end. These are the moments that we've had. But those moments never stuck. And the reason why they never stuck was because Taker was never satisfied, right? Or Taker was too satisfied and wanted more. Taker was, fat kid in a candy shop, or bacon shop, or whatever shop makes that particular person fat. Mine's just laziness. Anyway, but he was never satisfied. So Triple H is saying he deserves that satisfaction. He deserves to actually be satisfied for once on his decision to retire. For once, and that's what I got out of that. How much he appreciates the crowd is what we go into next. He talks about how now it takes him longer to get out of the ring because he wants to soak in all the moments, etc., etc. They show a clip of a little speech where he, is talking to the crowd after, I think it was the MSG show. They go into a bit about MSG again, and it's like, okay, but we're not really here for the MSG moment. Like that whole Zionification of MSG to me kind of seems at this point arbitrary and not fake, but kind of promotional for MSG over anything else. You know what I mean? It's like maybe it's because I live in an era where and not even the era, but huge moments happen at other places. You know what I mean? And have happened at other places. You know what I mean? Like, rock and roll was born in the South. You know what I mean? Like, there's like some of the greatest, and as an adult, I understand like some of the greatest things and times and performances and moments and sporting events, etc., etc. So a lot of that stuff happens in small venues. A lot of that stuff happens outside of New York or LA or Chicago, right? Like these things, like I get the aura of these meccas and all this other stuff, but sometimes, you know, you have your best stuff in, you know, a fucking high school gym somewhere or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, or some of the best performances were, some of the best comedy performances, for instance, were in like dingy little clubs in fucking Florida or somewhere. You know what I mean? Like this whole Zionification of MSG, I get it, but at the same time, I'm like, we don't need to spend that much time on it. And we certainly don't need to spend 2 segments of the documentaries on them. Maybe that may have been filler because, as from what I can tell, from what I've heard, they were still filming the last couple of episodes up until very recently. So, you know, maybe that's it. Maybe they just needed some filler, but we don't necessarily need to do that. Early on, Taker says he's okay with walking away. Early on in this episode, he says that he's okay with walking away, which is good. And part of the reason for that is he said he goes back to his match with Goldberg in Saudi Arabia, and he says he was 2 inches away from getting I was 2 inches away from getting my neck broke. And he goes into all the effects that would have on his family, on him, on his health, if he would have survived at all. Says he's two inches away from getting his neck broke, if that, really. And he talks about how once that kind of thinking is in your head, it's hard to get it out. And that's very true. That's very true. Like, your mind and your body can oftentimes make those accidents happen if that's all you're thinking about with those accidents. You know what I mean? Like, if you're thinking hard about not injuring something, it can force you to move in a way that actually leans into you injuring stuff. You know what I mean? If you move at all, or if you move at the right time, which is another thing. You can hesitate when you don't need to hesitate. You could, there are all sorts of different things that screw with your head when you're performing in a wrestling ring or, you know, any other aspect that could, especially with athletics, that could make it so. You know, you don't want that creeping through your head. But he said that was in his head, and so now he's getting a little bit more okay with walking away. We talk a little bit, or he talks a little bit about his father. He mentions how his dad wasn't the biggest supporter of him getting into professional wrestling. Boy, ain't that always the story. Unless your parents were in professional wrestling, they hate you being in professional wrestling. Boy, oh boy, is that not a tale as old as time, that every professional wrestler or anybody who ever got into it or anybody who, you know, was even a fan of it knows word for word by heart, chapter and verse. Boy, oh boy. Anyway, but he says his father was actually proud of him before he died, and the success that he had, which is good. We get into the Broken Skull session with Stone Cold Steve Austin hosting. Obviously, that was the shoot interview that's on the network currently, and he talks a lot about how and, you know, anybody who's who's seen that, you should see it. It's pretty good. He talks about retirement in it again, and he talks again about how, you know, nobody's gonna tell me when I retire. I'm gonna tell everybody when I retire. Okay. Like, okay, I get it. That's the soapbox. That's the hill you want to die on. But that's a hill you could conceivably die on, which is what people are telling you, which you might want to take into account, Mr. Undertaker. But, you know, what do I know? Then we go into really the meat of this episode, which is the AJ Styles talk about the Boneyard match. AJ Styles talks about how one of his friends had listened to the podcast or watched the podcast, and talked to AJ about it, and AJ was like, well, I want to be, if not his last match, one of his last matches. I mean, if he's got 1 or 2 left in him, I want to be one that 1 or 2. That's a terrible AJ, and I know that, and I did it anyway. But he talks about how he wanted to be one of Taker's last matches, and he called him up, and he talked about Mania. He asked him, hey, what are you doing for Mania, Taker? And they go into all these superstars talking about how AJ is that guy, how AJ is one of the best in the business right now. So, I think it was Austin who said he is the best in the business right now. That's a hard point to argue, and really, you could argue he has been for a long, long time. Like, AJ has a lengthy resume of being one of the best guys in the business. Even when he was in TNA, he was doing some of the best work anybody was doing. It may have been on a smaller platform, or it may have been on a platform that not a lot of people had seen or knew about or were keen to watch, but it was some extraordinary work. I still, to this day, think back about the matches he had with Chris Daniels and Samoa Joe, and how those were some of the best wrestling matches, period, and how that was one of the best rivalries and feuds going, was the 3 of them over the X Division belt. Like, they are inextricably linked together because of those incredible moments and those incredible matches that they had, and Taker realizes that. And I remember there are a lot of people that I don't know if you remember a couple years ago. You should, because everybody remembers it. But a couple years ago, the rumor was Shawn Michaels coming back to do a match with AJ Styles at Royal Rumble. Some meme, some fan-made, not that well done poster made it to the internet, and the fucking wrestling internet blew the fuck up. Not like it did the other day, but it blew the fuck up, because everybody, I want to see this match. I want to see this match. Let me have this match. Oh, this is a leaked photo. It wasn't a leaked photo. It was some fucking fan service shit. Everybody, like, come on. Like, you guys fall for a lot of shit. Anyway, the ones that even the ones that didn't say it was for real were like, we want this to be real. And Shawn Michaels, this is before he came back for that truckload of fucking money Saudi Arabia dropped at his doorstep, was like, I'm retired, right? But this match, people wanted that match because AJ Styles isn't Shawn Michaels in that he doesn't have the persona. Even the born again Shawn Michaels is not the same, but it's a similar vein. It's an easy leap to take because of how good, how fluid, how diversified their moveset, how well-rounded a wrestler they are versus everybody else that's around them, really, at the time. Now, AJ's bravado and mic skills may not exactly be the same as Shawn Michaels. Shawn Michaels, to me, has the edge there. But in terms of well-roundedness, I could see Shawn Michaels in a brawl. I could see AJ in a brawl. OJ. Yeah, I could definitely see OJ in a brawl. Woo! No. But I can see AJ. Shit, I'm going to hell for that one. No. I can see AJ in a brawl, and I can see Shawn in a brawl. I can see AJ in a high-flying match, and Shawn in a high-flying match. I can see AJ hold his own in a technical match, and Shawn hold his own in a technical match. Neither one are necessarily technical marvels, but I can see them holding their own. They had that well-roundedness. They have, the entrance, the energy, the look, the feel of big matches. When you think about them coming to the ring, you think about them having big matches, them having the possibly and probably best matches on the card. You saw, everybody's, falling over themselves about the recent Intercontinental Championship match. They have those personas, and not just personas, they have those resumes, the history to follow up on that. that makes you understand, even if you don't know. Okay, I've talked about this before. I want to go a little bit more into this now. Knowing who the best people on the card are, who the most talented wrestlers on the card are, even if you're a mark. I'm 8 years old. I get into professional wrestling because I see Razor Ramon and 1-2-3 Kid have it out on Raw for the first time. Right? So I don't know, and that just gets me into professional wrestling. I don't know anything about professional wrestling. I don't know that it's a work. I think it's all a shoot. I don't know that the Undertaker isn't really a dead person. You know what I mean? Like I don't know those things. I think it's shoot all the way around. So I'm apt to believe what I'm told on the television on paper, right? I'm 8 years old, and you know, as Marv from Home Alone said, kids are stupid, right? At least that's what the perception is. But I know in my heart of hearts that even though Razor Ramon is my favorite wrestler, I like seeing Razor Ramon work. I like Razor Ramon coming out, even though he's my favorite. I know that the best is Bret Hart. Even when I have the action figures, right? And I'm playing with the action figures. And Bret Hart, and I have Bret Hart versus Razor Ramon. Because I hear that they had a match at Royal Rumble that same year that I, wasn't into wrestling yet to understand. Bret still wins. Against my favorite wrestler, Bret still wins, and I'm fine with that. Because I know Bret is better. But I know Razor is my favorite. Maybe occasionally I might have Razor tough it out and win. But even if I'm doing action figures, Bret still wins. Because I know he's better. I know Mr. Perfect is one of the better wrestlers. Right? I know Ludwig Borga sucks. If I have Ludwig Borga on any of the action figures at all, he loses all the time because I know he sucks. I know Bastion Booger sucks. Right? I can tell the difference. I can tell who's the best. Even that first few months of professional wrestling, I knew Bret Hart was the best wrestler on the show. I knew Mr. Perfect was a close second. I knew those things. I knew Razor was my favorite and one of the better ones, but I knew Bret and Perfect were the best ones on the roster at the time that I became a fan. I knew that. You know AJ Styles is better. You can see it. You know AJ Styles is arguably the best one on the roster right now. Best wrestler on the roster right now. And honestly, I'm thinking about it, and it's hard to come up with a better wrestler on the roster than AJ Styles. You can make an argument for Daniel Bryan. I'd put him slightly below AJ. All things considered. Slightly below. I put him in that Mr. Perfect role that I had all those years ago. Just a little bit, just 1 and 1A. Right? But you knew that. You knew who was good and who wasn't. So for Undertaker to take AJ Styles' offer to fight him at WrestleMania, for all these wrestlers to come up and say, AJ Styles is the one. That's not a hard thing to sell. We all know that. If you watch AJ Styles, you all know that. Now, that's even taking into consideration some of the less than stellar offerings we've gotten from AJ recently, or not even recently, over the last few years. Like that Shinsuke Nakamura feud was the fucking pits. I don't know why that sucked so badly, but it did. It sucked so. I think. And you can even with that, you can still tell that just from knowledge, that may have been a WWE thing. WWE may have fucked with him and made him not as good. But you have guys like Edge talk about, if you want to come back, against AJ. He's one of the most fundamentally gifted, best wrestlers that you have on the card. And for Taker to want to do that and face him at Mania is not a bad choice. The documentary then goes into Taker going to the PC and talking with some of the bigger guys at NXT. We see Keith Lee, we see Damian Priest, we see all these bigger guys. Some of them, I think like the one big giant dude hasn't been seen on TV other than that stupid ninja gimmick. That's stupid ninja gimmick from the greatest wrestling match ever, Backlash. But Taker is going over stuff with them, and he's getting into that teacher role, which is good. He starts working out at the PC Center with the kids. Very light stuff, you know what I mean? Like he walks the ropes first and then runs a little bit, you know. He does some light movement with them, not even really making contact with them. But he does some working out, and he says he wants to feel how he feels. This is before WrestleMania. This is before the build-up with AJ. He wants to kind of contemplate, see where he's at. He even goes back to his old gym that he's got, you know, the one that he put together for in that storage place by his house, the one he put together for, I think it was the Roman match. It was in episode 4, I think it was, 3 or 4. He goes back there to work out. He goes to the PC Center to work out. And he asks a very poignant question. He says, what happens if I hate this comeback? What happens if I'm not satisfied with this comeback? You know what I mean? He's talking about, now he's got to come back and redeem that. That's progress. Because he's now acknowledging and seeing what we've all seen. Not just through this documentary, but for years. What we've all seen. What we all know. You know, that Roman match, shit, Taker's going to come back and try to redeem that one. You know, the Cena match, it wasn't as long as Taker may have won it. Now he wants to come back and do it again. The fucking Triple H match, now he wants to redeem that one. You know, we've seen that pattern before, and now he's seeing it, which is huge, 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 huge progress. He talks about the self-confidence issues that Ric Flair had around about WrestleMania 18, and how Ric Flair said that WCW kind of made him not complacent, but made him doubt himself and doubt his abilities and doubt where he was professionally. And Taker was like, well, you're fucking Ric Flair. I remember that time period. Flair had a valid point. Flair had a valid point. Taker wasn't the only one who tried to talk him out of it. There was this thing, if you get the Ric Flair documentary, the Ultimate Ric Flair Collection, which was the first Ric Flair DVD set, it ends with Flair, you know, having a match with Triple H on a Raw in 2003, and the roster at the time comes out, which if you look at it, nowadays it's like, Jesus, that was the roster back then? Fuck, no wonder shit was down. But the roster all comes out and celebrates Ric Flair because Ric Flair's confidence is down, and this is all post-match and everything, and oh, everybody, you know, we love you, Ric Flair, we love you, Ric Flair, right? To boost his confidence up. Boy, oh boy, that's an amazing thing to happen, and you have to be a legend for that, because if you're not a legend, people are ready to just fucking kick you in the balls when you feel down in professional wrestling. But, you know, that didn't really turn things around. What turned things around for Flair really was evolution, and him being able to work with younger guys on a closer capacity than he was. And that turned him around a little bit, and that helped improve his match quality for sure for the next few years of his career, up until he retired from WWE, right? So that self-confidence thing is not fake. That self-confidence thing is real. There can be other issues that self-confidence is feeding off of, right? Like you can gain weight, you can lose a step, father time gets you, family issues, whatever, and that self-confidence thing gets tied to those things, but that's not fake. It is very real. And Taker talks about that with Flair, and talks about how he actually understands it now at this point in his career versus him not understanding it. Jesus, 16 years ago now? Fuck. 14 years? Fucking no. 18 years? 18 years ago now. Jesus. Holy shit. 18 years ago now, yeah. Taker jokes about the documentary never ending because he'll never retire. And, you know, it seems like if he's on that cycle, he's on that cycle, which, hey, you know, is that a joke or a threat, Undertaker? Like, at this point, you're kind of looking for finality. So we speed past Taker agreeing to the AJ match, and then the Saudi Arabia setup where he goes out and has the, challenge match against AJ where he never takes off his coat. He's joking around all day leading up to it. We get a nice little candid shot of Taker yelling Kobe as he shoots his wrist tape into the garbage can. That was just after Kobe's death. It was about a month after Kobe's death, which actually comes back in the documentary. Taker then works out a little bit to get ready for his match with AJ. Speaking of, by the way, in case you didn't see it, this is Jack Daniels and Jack Daniels glass, don't you know? Because we got to do it all the way up. His trainer says that we're looking to build Undertaker's lung capacity at this point, more than anything else, so that he can go for a long period of time. Well, that gets not stopped, but paused for a second as Taker gets a nosebleed. Now, listen. Nosebleeds are historically, linked with either fights or nerds, right? But they can happen, I guess. Like if you have seasonal allergies, right? That happens. He's getting ready in February-ish, so like if the climate changed in Texas, right? He wasn't ready for it. Maybe he busted a capsule in his nose or whatever like that and didn't know it was happening, but he busted pretty bad. The last time I remember that happening in professional wrestling, it was actually a match I was involved in. I was managing Kyle, and it was me managing Kyle and somebody else. I can't remember who. Might have been, it wasn't Peter Avalon. I forget who it was. It was me managing Kyle and somebody else versus the Rock Nest Monsters here in LA. Johnny Goodtime and Johnny Goodtime and fucking Jesus. He was the guy with the nose. He got his nose busted. It was Johnny Goodtime and Johnny. He was fucking. His gimmick was he was a rocker. Fuck. It was Jesus. This is fucking embarrassing. That's how fucking drunk I am. Hold on. Yuma. Fuck. Why couldn't I think of his last name? Jesus. Why couldn't I think of his last name? Johnny Goodtime and Johnny Yuma. I don't know why the fuck I couldn't think of his last name. Johnny Goodtime and Johnny Yuma. And Johnny Yuma was on the apron. Johnny Goodtime was in the ring. I think Kyle was in the ring with him. And Johnny Yuma his nose just started busting. His nose just started fucking bleeding all over the place. And like a lot. Like a lot. Like a lot. Like for no reason. Like he had to like get off the apron, like grab a towel and shit. It was fucking weird. I don't know why the fuck I couldn't think of his fucking last name for some reason. I saw his face. I knew his name. I know his real name. I couldn't think of his working last name. That's damn. I'm sorry, Johnny Yuma. Anyway, yeah, his nose just started bleeding all over the fucking place. Like just all over the place. He got it under control, but it was weird, and that kind of thing just kind of happened here too. I defy you to call Undertaker a nerd for having a nosebleed, but it fucking happens. He talks about at Mania how he'll be 55 at that Mania, and so he knows he's got to be able to keep up with AJ. And he talks again about going out on his own terms. He talks again about not wanting, I hear what the critics and the fans say, and the fans and the critics and the fans and the critics. Okay. At what point, though, are they right? At what point, though, is it not them bashing you? Is it not them going after or hating you or whatever you put in that mindset? At what point is it not the truth? At what point is it not them seeing with a more objective eye because they're not in it, because they're not in your headspace, because they're not in your body? What point is it not real that they're seeing this? and seeing the degradation of a hero, seeing Father Time come and take his pound of flesh every time. He keeps taking another pound of flesh every time you get in that ring. At what point are those critics not correct, Undertaker? And that's my question to him at that point. And he talks about how he has to train 10 times as hard to get a quarter of the results. Well, shit. Taker? At what point is that not a clue? At what point is that not, is that not that final dinner bell, that final fucking bell for you to get out of the ring? Anyway, AJ, we go into the AJ Raw promo. Michelle McCool's feelings on it. Michelle McCool said she felt a certain kind of way about it, like she knew it was going to be a promo, but she felt a certain kind of way about how deep those cuts were. Like, really? I get it. Like, maybe those were deep cuts to Undertaker and to Michelle. Michelle, texts AJ's wife and says, wow, I didn't know he was going to go that deep. That's because Undertaker and Michelle McCool have probably gone, and this goes back to the other point, never taken the criticism that is to Undertaker, or was to The Undertaker and his career and his performances at that time, either seriously or at all. They never, these are not, the points that AJ made in that promo, I remember that promo. The points AJ made in that promo were not new. They had been said for years. They were not new. These were not new ideas. AJ essentially just went to Twitter and plucked quotes from me and other people on The Undertaker's career at that point for the last 5, 7, 8 years. They had just plucked, actually really 6, about 5 or 6 years. He had just plucked the fucking quotes from the last 5 or 6 years. There's nothing new. But either they were in their own bubble, and that there's pros and cons to that, And this, we see one of the cons there, that if you shield yourself from that, if you put yourself in your own echo chamber, and this goes for any kind of echo chamber, if you put yourself in your own echo chamber, it's hard to gain perspective. And so when AJ said these things, it was hard for Michelle and Undertaker to take those things that he was saying. It was like, oh, he cut deep. No, he didn't. He's been saying what logical fans have been saying for 6 years prior, since losing the streak, which not just because Taker lost the streak, Taker needs to retire, but because his performances after that, and even in that match, were subpar. Like, these aren't new ideas, but they take them as new ideas, and I can kind of understand why. Taker says that the AJ promo forced him to make a change in his persona. He talks about the American Badass gimmick change and how he felt original Undertaker was getting a little stale, and it was, some of that was his performances too, but okay, fine, the gimmick was stale too, fine. Apparently the Unholy Trinity, Taker was talking about going into the Boneyard match. I and other people thought, he's bringing some guests along with him. He's bringing like Kane and Michelle McCool, you know what I mean? He's bringing some people. No, apparently the Unholy Trinity was Mark Calloway, American Badass, and Deadman Undertakers. Apparently that was the Unholy Trinity. He was going to bring elements of all three of those because he talks about my wife and so I got to, the other Deadman Undertaker can't defend that, and then you got the man Mark Calloway defending that, and then ABA and all this other stuff. He envisioned a regular match before the coronavirus, this is an interesting point. What kind of match are we going to get before the world fell apart biologically? It was going to be a regular match. And that may have continued the cycle. Because if we're being honest, you're talking about a 55-year-old Undertaker versus a 40-year-old The almost 45-year-old? Hey, Jesus, almost 45. Fucking. Oh, shit. Hold on. 77. All right, so 75. That's 25. Yeah, almost 45-year-old AJ Styles. Holy shit. He's almost 45. He's still doing that kind of shit. That's amazing. Yeah. In a regular wrestling match with 30,000, 40,000, 60,000, 100,000 people. Oof. Oof. Yeah, AJ's the guy that you would want to choose if you had to get in the ring and cover up some of the spots of the Undertaker and some of the weaknesses, etc., etc. But also, leading up to that, we saw in this documentary, Taker didn't give himself a whole lot of time to get ready, right? He didn't give himself that year that he gave himself with Cena. Or, you know, that however that long he gave himself with Cena, or, you know what I mean? Like, he gave himself that short amount of time that he gave himself with Roman. Oof. That's rough. That's rough. So in a regular match, we may not have gotten the best Undertaker, and we may have continued, this never-ending cycle of, well, I gotta redeem myself now, I gotta go back out there and redeem myself now, I gotta go back and redeem myself now. Oof. But luckily for the Undertaker, the world fell apart biologically. And so Creative came up with the idea of a Boneyard match. Triple H is talking about, well, I asked him, I'm like, what the hell is a Boneyard match? And they're like, we don't know. You figure it out, you know? And so nobody knew what a Boneyard match was leading into a Boneyard match. There was confusion. It was like, what the hell is a Boneyard match? Is it gonna be like a Buried Alive match? Like, what the hell is a Boneyard match? Makes sense that we didn't know because fucking WWE didn't know. WWE didn't know until they actually went out there and like started prepping the Boneyard match in this little plot of land about 40 miles outside of the Performance Center. Apparently, while they were prepping it, the Undertaker's brother dies. Undertaker gets a call that the Undertaker's brother suffered, that his brother Tim suffered a heart attack and died that day while they were prepping the Boneyard match. So then he has to go out there the next day and actually do the Boneyard match with that on his mind. And he talks, and this is one of the first times we see him talk about, or hear about him talking about his gimmick and all the aura of the gimmick, you know, the burials, the headstones, all that stuff, and real life tragedies when they happen, and how he has to push through that to perform, right? This obviously isn't the first time a tragedy is struck in the Undertaker's life, with him in that dead man persona, right? His father died, Owen died, other people in the business have died. But this is the first time we ever hear him talk a little bit about that aspect of it, and even then it's very little, obviously because it's so close to home with him and his brother, but it's very, very little. He talks about how, you know, it's a little difficult going out there and doing, you know, that with the burial idea and him literally about to have to bury his brother, right? That's, you know, that's an aspect that I don't necessarily know that I would necessarily want to know coming from him. That's something that he's obviously had a lot of years to deal with, and I would imagine that him figuring that out for himself is probably best. But that is an interesting avenue to think about. We get clips of the Boneyard match, and Taker talks about the cinematic style and how it was difficult because of all the pauses, right? A lot of fans, this is interesting because a lot of fans have talked about cinematic matches, and since the Boneyard match, they've said, oh, you know, if you can bring Taker back in more of these, that'd be great, and you know, it'd be good, better for his health, and blah, blah, blah. He doesn't have to do this and that and the other. He can land on this, that, and the other, right? But apparently, no. Apparently, those Boneyard matches are actually tough because of the pauses in between when you do the cinematic aspect of it, and the pauses and the resetting of the lights, resetting of the cameras, and all this other stuff. All those pauses cool you down. And when you're doing an athletic performance, cooling down is not always the best idea for you, because then your adrenaline level goes down. Now you're not necessarily performing at the pace, at the level you thought you were before, or should have been at before, or should be at continuing going forward when you got to do the next thing. You're bringing your heart rate down. It's almost the same idea of doing like a workout straight through versus like all these pauses and long pauses, etc., etc., etc. Like, you're not necessarily getting the best out of yourself when you do that, right? When you do the huge cool down, the huge come down, and those kinds of matches present a lot of those huge come downs and cool downs. They film this through 5 a.m. in the morning, so a lot of that time was spent waiting for things to be set up and torn down, etc., to do the next big thing. So even then, even the fans that are like, we want to see more of these cinematic matches and we want to see more of Taker in these cinematic matches. I'm not one of those fans. Not a fan of cinematic matches at all. I fucking hate them. I fucking hate cinematic matches. I fucking hate them. But even that aspect of, oh, it's better physically for the performers. Maybe if you're not 55. But Taker had a rough time doing those matches because, you know what I mean? Like, or doing that match because that gives you more time to think about, oh yeah, that bruise is going to hurt in the morning. You're coming down. You're coming down. And then you got to take yourself back up and you got to come down and take yourself back up again. It's a lot. It's a lot. Taker heard nothing but positive things about the Boneyard match, which again reiterates the bubble. Because if we're being honest, there were some people like myself who did not like it, who are not fans of cinematic matches. Now, mind you, in the vast, you know, atmosphere of professional wrestling fandom and Twitter and all this other stuff, you know, a lot of times legit critiques get shouted down as, you're just hating, you just hate all new things, you just hate new things, you just hate fun, wrestling's supposed to be fun and fake and all this other shit, right? But there's a significant amount of us, right, who don't like those matches, who hate those fucking matches. I had no plans on watching fucking Backlash at all. I went over to Kyle's house and we ended up watching it. I fucking hated that shit. I hated the fucking cinematic match with Adam Cole and fucking Velveteen Dream for a number of reasons, not the least of which, Adam Cole needs to fucking retire that fucking Panama Sunrise. He lands on his back and it looks like shit. But the cinematic match, I hate cinematic matches. I just fucking hate them. I just fucking hate them. So not only are they not necessarily better for the wrestlers involved, depending on the wrestler, especially with the injuries and the lineage of The Undertaker, but they're not even necessarily that fucking good if you're really being honest about it. I'm sorry, I'm losing my shit, but cinematic matches fucking suck. Hear nothing but positive things about it. Then, tragedy strikes again. And Michelle McCool's nephew dies shortly after that WrestleMania match. And Kobe Bryant's death, which happened long before, but Taker talked about how that affected him. And losing all these different people in Mark Calloway's life affected how he sees his life, affected how he sees the business, affected how he sees his role in his life, in the business, in his family, and his family's role in his life, affected all that. And Taker said he doesn't want to miss out on his family. He says that what he gave to the business, he wants to give back to his family now. And Taker says two things that, you know, really make it seem like this is the end. He says he's got no desire to come back. And he says this time the cowboy really did ride off into the sunset. Now, he says in a pinch, you know, if Vince McMahon really needs me in a pinch and he asks me to come back, you know, never say never. You know what I mean? I don't know. But, which, god damn it, that's so disheartening because that's so, god damn it. Because, listen, that seems to be one of Undertaker's biggest fucking albatrosses is Vince McMahon asking him. Is if Vince McMahon says so, he'll do it because he loves and respects Vince McMahon so much. And Vince McMahon, like I've talked about before, doesn't want to see The Undertaker go because he sees himself in The Undertaker, I think. He sees, you know, this is my creation. This is my longest creation. This is 30 years of me in this person. Fucking goddamn it, I don't want to see him go. I'm going to keep asking him back and keep asking him back. We'll just bring The Undertaker in. We need a spike in the ratings. We bring The Undertaker in. And yet, Taker still gives him that power. He still gives Vince McMahon that power to, in case of emergency, break glass and ask for the Undertaker to come back. God damn, he can't do that. That's like a junkie saying, "I quit heroin, but if my dealer ever needs me to buy some, I respect the man too much. I'll buy a eighth or kilo or ounce or I don't know how it's measured. A fucking brick. I don't know. A fucking ton. I don't know how it's measured. But a gallon. I don't know. Fucking. But I'll if he ever needs me, I'll fucking buy some more. Don't fucking don't. Fucking don't. But other than that, he says he knows he's got more good to do away from the ring than in it. Again, real progress. Real progress. And he says his thank you to the boys, and other workers talk about the Undertaker, and that's the end of the documentary. That's the end of the series. And they talk about, Undertaker looks really, looks like he's real content with his home life now, and et cetera, and he's found that peace, and that's good. So we get this idea that Undertaker, and again, progress. Undertaker is probably 85% okay with being retired. That's progress. Because years before, and Undertaker says at the beginning of the documentary, he wasn't okay with it. He wasn't okay with retiring. Even though he's the one that commissioned the documentary crew. He's the one that commissioned this, saying this is going to be his last. He wasn't okay with retiring then. He's more okay with retiring now. I say 85%, it's really probably more 80, maybe even 75, because of Vince McMahon. Because of Undertaker's respect for, admiration for, worship for, relationship with Vince McMahon. If Vince asks him back, he comes back. And there's nothing stopping Vince McMahon from asking him back. There's nothing stopping Vince McMahon from asking him back. Especially with the downturn in ratings and output, and fucking now they had to fucking cancel tapings and shit. There's nothing stopping Vince McMahon from asking him back. Nothing. He signed a fucking contract that takes him through to when he's 75 years old. There's nothing stopping Vince McMahon from asking him back. There's nothing from Taker's heroin dealer asking him back to buy another, I don't know, fucking liter. I don't know. But fucking heroin. Nothing. Especially as we lead up to Survivor Series, Undertaker's 30th anniversary, or 30th year with business, with the company. So that's the only thing. Now, we celebrate the progress of getting Undertaker to 75 to 85% sure he's retiring. And that's the end. And that cowboy's really written off in that sunset. God damn it, put it on a shirt. Put it on billboards. Fly it over Undertaker's house every single fucking day. Cowboys written off in the sunset. Fucking smoke, fucking skywriting, and the banner. Fucking drop flyers over his house every single day. Cowboys written off into the sunset. 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 And then maybe we can but even then, that won't nullify Vince McMahon's influence on The Undertaker. So, there's that. But, the positive. It feels like this is it. And even just before I watched, I stupidly went on Facebook. Went on Facebook for notifications. And the first thing I see on the timeline is, Undertaker retires. It's like, God damn it, I haven't even watched this shit yet. Motherfucker. Officially retired? Officially? I mean, it's professional wrestling, right? Terry Funk has retired how many fucking times? Fucking Foley's retired twice. Flair's retired a couple of times. Not a few. Shawn retired and came back, right? Like, official, there's nothing official because it's fucking professional wrestling. But just one official. Maybe fairly confident that we've seen the last of The Undertaker in a professional wrestling setting having a professional wrestling match. He looked like a natural fit for the Performance Center, which would be tremendous for them to have him there. Now, mind you gotta work around all the fucking overproducing shit, but Taker's been through those eras, so Taker knows how to get that across, I think, better than a lot of other people. Do I think we've seen the last of The Undertaker in a professional wrestling setting? I am about 75 to 80% sure we have. That Boneyard match, take it for what it was the last we've seen of The Undertaker in having a professional wrestling match. Fairly certain about that. Outside of like maybe a one-off, you know. But even then, not matches, right? Or not real matches. Like old-timers matches, maybe. I'm fairly certain. I would say hold off on the headlines that The Undertaker's officially retired. Hold off on those. Because we've seen that before. So hold off on those. And as I went back and I watched that portion of the documentary like 3 or 4 times where Taker talks about retiring and the Cowboys written off into the sunset and all that other stuff. That's great. But that Vince McMahon caveat scares me. You know, Michelle McCool says, you know, I'm happy seeing him at peace and sitting here trying to catch fish and all that other stuff. That Vince McMahon caveat scares me for The Undertaker and for his health and for his career. It scares me. It's funny. Vince McMahon is now the scariest part of The Undertaker. To me, it's now Vince McMahon. And that's very real. But I do think for the most part, we probably have a now retired Undertaker. And I am more than happy for Mark Calloway about that. He finally got a send-off. He finally got a moment. Finally got a ride-off in the sunset gimmick that appears to have stuck, even though it's only been a couple of months since that aired. It appears to have stuck, or appears to be sticking. The documentary appears to solidify that. We're seeing more of The Undertaker doing like ESPN interviews. It appears to solidify that. He appears to be more at peace. He appears to be more understanding of where he is physically, where he is mentally even, and where his place in professional wrestling is for all time. So I'm happy, and that is a rare thing. A lot of times in professional wrestling, your career ends because your career ends. It ends because of a stupid argument backstage, or it ends because of an injury, or it ends because you never made it to this point, or it ends because X, Y, and Z. Or it continues past where it should have. I, again, 80% believe that we have seen the end of The Undertaker's career. And, hey, that's a lot better than we got at the beginning of the documentary series and a couple years ago where it was 50-50. And if it's at that point, you know, what can you say to the man other than fucking salute, brother? Like, what can you say? And so, kiddies, I think that's the end of The Undertaker's career. I know that's the end of the documentary series, 5 parts. We're done with that. We'll see more of the fallout. Obviously, there'll probably be more ESPN interviews, etc., where Taker goes more into detail about X, Y, and Z, etc., etc. Are you really retired? Are you really retired? And he might be forced to answer that. He might just give the standard, I don't know, answer. Never say never, answer. Or he could say the Stone Cold and Shawn Michaels answer of, yeah, I'm retired, I'm not coming back. We'll see what those answers will be in the coming days. But looking at this documentary, I'm fairly certain we've seen the end of our brother Taker, professional wrestling on that level. And hey, happy trails, man. Party people. Ooh, tell me what you think down there in the comment section. Like, share, subscribe. I need you to do all the fancy things that you do down there in the comment section, particularly the sharing, particularly the subscribing. Hey, we are coming up on 25 years of the worst King of the Ring of all time, King of the Ring 1995. The worst of all time. It's happening this Thursday as I'm taping this and airing this, Thursday, June 25th. On that day, I am dropping a retrospective on King of the Ring 1995. This review has been 4 years in the making. This is really from the vault. And I came back and I finished it, and hey, it's actually going to be 25 years since then. So how about I post it on the 25th year anniversary? Perfect. I finished it. I'm pretty happy about it. I'm pretty proud of it. I hope you'll enjoy it too when it drops on the 25th. Let people know about that. Actually, this Thursday, the 25th, is going to be a big day. So we've got that. We've got the A Different World watch-alongs, which will drop on the 25th as well. And in the afternoon, about 5:30 p.m. Pacific time. And we've got my podcast, How Do We Even Get Here? That drops on Thursdays as well. So we look forward to that's going to be a big Thursday. The 25th is going to be huge Thursday here for the channel. Like, share, subscribe. Make sure that you tell people about the channel to help get us up to that echelon, not upper echelon, but an echelon on YouTube where I can, start doing more shit. I need a few more subscribers to get there, and you are going to help me out. I appreciate that from you. We will see you later this week. Undertaker, we'll see you later on down that road. And as always, cheers.